I'm so pleased and honored to be here, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's my first time in Tunisia, and I'm in love. So I have no conflicts for this presentation. You have heard us all speak that heart disease is the killer of women, and that women don't recognize our risk, and that we're not training our physicians to understand this. And I would just point you to one of the papers that was just published, a call to action for cardiovascular disease in women, that I think very well states the case. Cardiomyopathy and myocarditis occurs in every country. There are some countries, particularly in South America and Africa, where it is particularly predominant, but I think we are all vulnerable. As we get older, as women get older, our chances of developing heart failure increasing with age, and you can see also with the red being women and the blue being men, that by the time women are much older, our risk of heart failure is, and the prevalence of heart failure is profoundly increased. And this concept of heart failure occurring as a result of age is probably multifactorial. I will show you several large cohorts in the United States that look at older adults in the community, and even if you look at early stages of heart failure, stage A and stage B, the risk is really enormous, and the prevalence in an older community is very high, 50% of stage A heart failure, so they're at risk. And this is yet another large cohort that says the same thing. Incident heart failure is common in older persons. And what's important to know is that a large portion of that risk is preventable. So here are the prevalence of risk factors for heart failure, again, between men and women. What you can see is that there is a much higher incidence of hypertension in women, and we catch up to the men with diabetes and obesity. So those are the risk factors. And in this slide, if you look at the population attributable risks, so different than risk factors, I want to point out two important issues. One is hypertension is a more powerful risk in women, and what is not really appreciated is the powerful risk of diabetes in women. So our attributable risk of diabetes in women to develop heart failure is almost 3 times higher than men. And which we have known for quite some time is women are more likely to have preserved systolic function, therefore heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, HFpEF. And this occurs throughout all of our ages. There are a variety of reasons why this is true, which we don't have time to go into. This is a terrific paper that I will show you some slides, but I think the incidence of both HFrEF and HFpEF increase as women age, but our HFpEF risk is always higher. So the risk factors for hospitalized heart failure are, as I've already showed you, and obesity stands out as a significant risk factor, primarily for HFpEF rather than HFrEF. And in my country, this is an older report, and the darker colors are more obesity. You can see that not only in what we say women of color, so Hispanics, non-Hispanic blacks, huge swaths of our country have obesity. It's a terrible problem because junk food is cheap and they don't have access to healthy food. Now, there's two important things. One of them is good news. Physical activity can mitigate the risk of obesity. So on the top is HFrEF, reduced ejection fraction. On the bottom is HFpEF. The more physical activity, the less the risk for HFpEF. Not so much for HFrEF, but HFpEF. And look at the body mass index with HFpEF, not really for HFrEF. So it is very hard to fight weight gain, but physical activity will mitigate that risk and is very important. So in the American Heart Association, we have something called Life Simple 7, which talks about the factors that develop risk. It's a very simple way of looking at somebody's overall health. And what we can see is, even if we start in middle age, if you can develop a healthier risk profile, a better Life Simple 7, your chances of developing heart failure are much less. So even if we start in middle age, we can reduce our risk for heart failure. This says just the same thing. Look at what can happen. 60 minutes of brisk walking per week reduces the risk of heart failure by 10%. It's good news, huh?
It's so easy.
Yeah, it's easy, yes. Just walk the halls of my hotel, I think I get. I have very long hotel halls. So I'm showing you this paper. I don't have time to go through it, but there is more good news, how to prevent heart failure in women. But I want to stress the role of exercise training. This is just a paper that was published between the American Heart and the American College, looking at the entire evidence of exercise training and HFpEF. So what else can we do? I'm going to go quickly because I know we're behind time. The SPRINT study showed that the better you control blood pressure, the better you reduce your risk of heart failure. Just controlling blood pressure. Really spectacular results. And it's cost effective. It's cheap to take care of blood pressure. We've heard that at this conference all day. And people feel fine. The people that get intensive treatment, they had no change in their brain, no change in their well-being, no increase in dizziness. So you have heard this before. We wrote an editorial that said women with heart failure are unheard, untreated, and unstudied. You've seen this. Only 20% of women in the key heart failure trials. So all the things that I've told you about heart failure and that you've learned is based only on 20% women. Shocking. And even though women with HFrEF live longer than men, their additional years of life are of poorer quality, with greater self-reported psychological and physical disability, and they receive suboptimal treatment. Less anticoagulation, less devices, more drugs that are inappropriate. Terrible. So women are not treated as well as men. And I'll finish by saying that if you have heart failure, you're at risk for sudden death, and women receive CPR less often than men. Yeah. Many, many countries. My country, I suspect your country as well. So we have to train our population to learn about CPR and that it's safe to do CPR on women. If you ask in America why don't they do CPR on women, they think they'll be accused of touching them inappropriately or sexual assault and fear of causing injury because of their breasts. So we have to overcome that. We now have training mannequins with breasts so that women learn, so that everyone learns how to do this. So I'll finish, say thank you again.